Friends, I mean all of you, those of you who agree with me politically and those of you who don't, those of you who agree with me about my faith and those of you who don't, you're all my neighbors. The word I live by is that my neighbors are you and everybody like you, whoever you are and whatever like you means to you or anyone else. We're neighbors. And uh, I am called to love my neighbors myself, not only called, but inclined to. I've found no reason not to. I not only love you, but I, in most cases, like you. And sometimes I like your clever quips, even when they're designed to discredit beliefs that I have. But I've got to tell you, I've got to be honest with you. I told you I was going to try to be honest, and I've got a bit of fight spirit in me. By the way, if I were stuck in a room with Donald Trump, I think I'd find something to like about him. I think we might be able to have an interesting conversation, kind of crazy conversation, but I wouldn't have a lot of hope of anything productive coming out of it, but I don't think it would be the end of the world. But I am really having a hard time keeping up with all the craziness around us. Uh, and there's a lot of craziness and a lot of crazy making. And I think there is, if there's any intelligence coming out of Washington, it is the intelligence to know sort of intuitively that you can get your way by keeping things off balance. And by throwing way too much information and way too many decisions and way too many changes at the American people all at once. One of the things that has been going on is this big, beautiful bill or big, ugly bill or wherever you're coming from, this big bill, which has a lot more in it, as most bills in Washington do and have for decades, but much more than rearranging government expenditures. There are buried in there items that most people don't know about. And if they took the time to think about them, if they had the time to think about them, if they actually took the time and had the time to read the whole kit and caboodle, they would find that they wouldn't like them. They wouldn't like them under some other presidency. Maybe they would like them under this presidency. But long-term thinking says we must consider implications of coming just as close as we possibly can to violating our Constitution and sometimes going over the line and hoping we can get by with it before it gets settled in court, and then hoping that maybe the court will tilt in our direction and ignore the Constitution. There's a lot of garbage in there. And there is a lot of self-admitted, I didn't read it all-ism going on, or counting on staff to read it, digest it, and to feed it back adequately. So I think that we're getting some rubber stamping of some very dangerous craziness that's going on. And none of us has time to keep up with it all. And I don't have time to use my little platform to the few who watch and listen to me to educate you. All I can really do is plead with you to educate yourself, to go after primary sources and multiple points of view, and especially those points of view that take into consideration the other points of view. And people who speak with calmer voices than me, and people that are open to reason and open to science and open to logic and are aware of history and are aware of ethics and morality and the principles behind them, and are not just mouthing the same thing that everyone else is saying. Scanning the news so much. Well, we're getting a lot of press on this reignited feud between Trump and Elon Musk, which is such a non issue. Everybody ought to know that there is not a room that has been built in America that is large enough for those two egos to occupy at the same time. And what do either of them want? Now, Elon's got a far more money than Trump, and he actually made it himself. Uh, but Trump's got all the money he's going to need for a long time. And Elon's got that and more years and a lot of ambition, but they both love something about this limelight and something about the popularity and something about the idea of being in control. And I think that Trump's skin is a lot thinner than Musk's, but Musk's isn't terribly thick. Where did we get to the place where analyzing the personalities of our leaders needs to be so important? You know, we had a president in the 60s who got a lot done. Well, we could talk about his ideas. We could talk about his programs. We could talk about his strengths. We could talk about his weaknesses. And we didn't really need to know what an SOB he could be in certain ways or what a charmer he could be in other ways. And of course, I'm talking about LBJ. Got a lot done. But at least the discussion was about big ideas and little ideas and programs. Would the Great Society work? And then America went the way of so many times in American life when we got sidetracked by something, and Vietnam raised its head, and very few people have ever taken the time to look back over the hundreds of years of history that went into that event that America got involved in for a relatively short period of time, which so affected our national political sphere, and so many lives lost, and a generation that is now in charge or retiring from being in charge. And I think that a lot of it has brought us to where we are today. Well, so many things bring us to where we are at any given time. We are so reluctant to understand history. Very few people can articulate the history of our disputes with Iran and Iran's dispute with America. And who's going to acknowledge that when we are so fixated on present realities and present self-interest? The whole world is like that. It has been formed through a series of events and movements and attitudes, and oftentimes it has been a victor who has interpreted the times and the history in such a way that the victor looks like the redeemer. Well, hard times, difficult times. It's Wednesday in America. We're not voting in any major national elections this year. But you know what? Every year, usually a couple times a year, there are local elections. Where do a lot of these Congress members and senators and ultimately national leaders come from? Well, they come from the grassroots. They come locally. You can see people on the move up. And never say that local councils of government, city councils, town councils, local positions, local boards of supervisors, school boards don't matter. Or state legislatures or state offices. All of those things matter. All of those things are a part of how we express our desires to and through the body politic. And what about political party affiliations? Well, we don't want to put too much stock in them, and we don't want to be ultimately identified with them because their meaning changes. But they're a place where we can put candidates up to be considered, potentially elected to office. They are tools for Americans to use. Do we need new parties? Probably. Do we need two parties? I'm sure we need at least two. Do we need to consider, well, should I be a part of another party? Maybe. Do we need to affiliate with one of the two major parties so that we can have influence? Possibly. Notice how definite I am about what you ought to do, because I don't know what you ought to do, except I think that you should be involved. And I think more than being involved in rubber stamping and voting, and those are important, or saying I agree with 100% of this platform, or I agree with 100% of that platform, it is far more important than that you identify issues and say, here's where I stand on this issue. Communicate with your decision makers, with your lawmakers. Communicate with those who implement policy. Communicate by going to town hall meetings. Communicate with your sheriff and your district attorney and your school boards and your boards of supervisors, and your city councils and your state legislatures. Do you know the name of the person who is the field director for your congressperson's office or your assembly person's office? Do you think you could call that person, or who is the chief of staff for your city council member? And if you don't, how do you have their ear when you need their ear over a specific issue? Do you know what's written in some of these local ordinances and how they affect the people that are most vulnerable? How would you articulate a philosophy that guides your political persuasions other than saying, I'm on God's side, or I'm on this side, or I'm on that side? I'm not saying those things are meaningless. I'm just saying that the way we say it and the way we use it and the way we don't back it up with the tracking, it becomes meaningless. This is just Tom talking, you know. Wednesday in America means we ought to be busy. We ought to be thinking. We ought to be reading. We ought to be listening. We ought to be communicating about things that matter. Now, I'm counting on you guys. I'm counting on you, because whatever side of anything you're on, we need a turnaround. Some of you think, well, happy days are here again, even though that was the Democratic Party's song. Well, they adopted it. Some of you think, well, things are going in the right direction. Well, we'll see. You'll see. But more important than seeing, by golly, let's do something. Let's get involved. Let's know each other. Let's love each other. Let's serve each other. Let's welcome each other. And let's be about becoming what America was meant to be. All the best to you today. Bye now.